Hello and good morning. It's a beautiful Sunday morning here up in Staffordshire. The sun's shining and all is well with the world. Well, wouldn't that be lovely if it was? Anyway, I've got a very special guest who is a really good friend, and I just think he's got an amazing story to tell about his life's journey. And his name is Stephen Slater. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Alan, and thanks for having me on your show.
I'm really looking forward to it, Stephen. Really, yeah, absolutely excellent. I find it quite amazing how you've altered your life from an early age to now, and how you actually got into doing what you're doing. But you know, let's say from when you left education, what was forefront in your mind then about what it is you wanted to do in your life soon?
Well, from an early age, actually. In fact, before I left secondary education, I always wanted to be a solicitor. Not necessarily everyone's cup of tea, but my cup of tea. And so I don't know. From a very early age, I wanted to be a solicitor. I didn't end up becoming a solicitor, as you know, but that was what was in my mind. What actually happened was I completed secondary education. At school, I never really paid too much attention unless it was a subject that I really enjoyed. So I loved English. I had an amazing secondary school teacher who was the head of the English department. And he really sort of fanned the flames of my interest in English. And so other than that, a lot of the subjects didn't really grab me. And I didn't pay much attention. I went to a very, very good school, actually. And I left school, and when I did, I think I had one at the time, one O level or GCSE, and other than that, that was it. So my father was very worried about me. What was I going to do? I wasn't particularly good at metalwork or woodwork, or I think had I gone into
you got one more our level than I got, so I understand, Stephen.
Well, and also I think if I'd have gone into a trade, it was fairly obvious that would have been a disaster. I wasn't very practical. And anyway, what happened? If you believe in chance, what happened was a small advert appeared in a newspaper, and my father saw it, and it was actually advertising for the role of what was called a junior barrister's clerk. I was 16 at the time, and my father saw it, showed it to me. And cut a long story short, what happened was I applied for an interview. I went to the temple for an interview in what was at the time one of the top chambers in the UK, in London. And unbeknown to both myself and my father, the lady who was interviewing was the secretary for what was called Barristers Clerks Association. And they had a vacancy in their chambers, and I was invited back for a second interview. I thought I was going to be put on a register, and at some point there might be an opportunity for me to apply for a position. but there was this position all the time, which wasn't being advertised in the actual chambers, where this lady run the Barristers Club Association. And I was invited back for a second interview, and I met the senior clerk, Eric Cooper OBE, and he interviewed me, and I was offered a position. So at 16, I was offered a position of a junior barrister's clerk, and that was the start of my legal career.
Wow!
And I started making. I started making the tea and running errands.
Some important job, Stephen, making the tea.
Exactly, and biscuits and one thing, and the running errands, and so I it was interesting because I was working with people much older than myself. Yeah. So the people surrounding me, were definitely older and wiser, and that was I learned a lot from being sort of in that environment. And then I was going across to the law courts regularly, behind the scenes, and in chambers. And that led to a 26-year career in law, working in some of the top barristers' chambers in the country. And I started as a junior clerk and then progressed up the ranks, eventually at age 21, being offered the position of a senior barrister's clerk. And at that time, the average age of senior barrister's clerks was maybe 48.
Wow.
So I was very, very young.
Yeah.
And the only thing was, Alan, was that I was living in the south. I'd never been to the north. And the role that I was offered for senior clerk was in Leeds, in Park Square in Leeds. So a decision had to be taken. Would I go somewhere new, 200 miles away, didn't know anyone, didn't have any friends or family, and I accepted the role and made the move.
That took a lot, didn't it? That took a lot. But obviously,
well, it did take a lot. It did take a lot. It was my mother didn't want me to do it, and I said to my dad, I said to my dad, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, the only advice I can give you is never look back in life and think, what if?" And so I took the plunge. I did it, and I was I was running the show, and again I had people reporting to me. I was only 21. I had people reporting to me who was in their 50s. So it was very, it was a big responsibility. Some of the people that was reporting to me was much older. They had wanted the job themselves, so there was an element of resentment.
I was just going to say that that was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I remember being physically sick in the toilet on my first morning. I was very nervous, and so that was the the start of a very senior role, and then I went on from there, to secure other positions, and 26 years in law.
Wow. Yeah, you see, it's strange how things kind of happen, but you see, if you actually think about it, that was 26 years. You saw a different side of life, didn't you? And and I suppose it opened up a world that I would imagine could be a bit of a surprise to you. at the time.
Well,
That makes sense.
well, at that early age, when I started, I didn't have any other frame of reference, because that was my first experience of work. And so I was only dealing with professionals. So, I wasn't dealing with members of the public at all. So I was dealing with judiciary, lawyers, barristers. That was the world I was in. No
Yeah.
experience of dealing with the general public. We didn't deal with the general public. They didn't have what's called rights of access. You had to go through a professional, i.e. solicitor, to be
Yes.
able to instruct a barrister. And so, in regard to the question you ask, regarding a surprise, it was a surprise in as much as I suddenly went from sort of my peer group at that young age, 16, 17, to just every day working with people who was, the youngest was in their 30s or 35 or something. So it was very different. It was very different what I was used to. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, could I ask then, after a successful career, what happened to you? What happened to make such a big change in your life?
So, yeah, that's a very relevant question. Yeah, what happened was, so the last 10 years of those 26 years, I became increasingly dissatisfied. And the reason was that I used to work extremely hard, extremely long hours. I was very successful at what I did. And the way I was remunerated was commission only. So I had no safety net. I had no minimum salary. I was paid purely on the basis of a commission, a percentage of what within a chambers. Let's describe it like a stable of barristers. So basically, within that grouping, each barrister would pay me a percentage of their annual earnings. So what it meant was I was massively incentivized towards helping them maximize their income, increase their income, and accelerate their career. And I was very good at it. I had a track record of success in that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been promoted as well. And anyway, so for the last 10 years, I became increasingly dissatisfied. And the reason was that the tension arose because not all barristers, but the majority, and particularly younger barristers as they was coming into the profession, they couldn't understand why in a large number of cases I was earning more money than they were, because
Right.
because their frame of reference was, I've been to bar school, I've got my bar exams, and I had to do X amount of studying, and I've been called to the bar. I'm a qualified barrister, and you're not. You're a barrister's clerk, or a senior barrister's clerk in my case. And how come you were getting paid more than me? And what I realized was that the majority of barristers had no business acumen. They were trained to be able to present cases, fight cases on behalf of their client, but they had very, very minimal business training or experience. Whereas the reality was, I was involved in the business side of the chambers, and so I knew that looking at the way I was remunerated, looking at everything, actually, there was very good reason why I was paid more than a lot of them. But they couldn't see that. And over those last 10 years, I thought, I need to find a way out of this. I need to find a way to be more in control of my own business. But I didn't know what to do, because the challenge was I was paid a lot of money and I had no idea how to manage money like most professionals, most people actually. We're not taught in school how to manage money. And so the more money I earned, the more money I spent. So I had, bigger house, more cars, so on and so forth. And my fear was that if I attempted to move away from what I knew, everything would collapse like a deck of cards.
Yeah.
So I continued on this route, increasingly frustrated, unhappy and dissatisfied. And then what happened one afternoon, I remember it well, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was under pressure with a particular task. And what happened was I collapsed. I was taken home in an ambulance, and I wanted to go straight back to work the following morning, because the only way I knew was to work extremely hard. And the mistake I made, and some people might be able to relate to this, I thought I was indispensable because I worked so hard, because I was so successful at what I did. I thought I couldn't be replaced. I thought I was indispensable. So reluctantly, I went to see my doctor the following morning, and he said to me, "Stephen, you need to take 3 months off work, rest and recuperate." And I said, "Oh, I can't do that." And he said, "Well, look, your body's been trying to communicate with you for some time. You've been ignoring it. And if you ignore it again now after what's happened, the next time it gets your attention, the consequences will be much worse." So that made me sit up and take notice. And I thought, well, I better take his advice. And then what happened was a really big shock, because the people I worked with, the chambers I worked in, they indicated that they thought I was making it up. They thought I was swinging the lead or whatever. And I couldn't believe it. I thought, well, after everything I've done, surely, in this situation, you would be supporting me. Actually, it was the opposite. I found myself in a court battle. I ended up in court with the barristers' chambers on the other side. You can imagine all the resources they had. I had to hire the head of the Law Society and a top QC in London to act for me. And had I lost the case, I would have been declared bankrupt. Everything was on it. The insurance I had in place to pay my mortgage protection insurance, said, "Oh, we can't pay you because you're involved in a court case. So we'll wait to the end of the court case, and if you win, we will pay your monthly mortgage." I obviously, said that's too late. I took insurance out in case I had a problem. So everything was against me. But the good news was, after incredible stress, I won the case. But what that did, Alan, was it gave me a light bulb moment. I was age 42 at the time. And it said, number one, anyone who works for who is an employer, works for anyone else, is definitely not indispensable. And the only person who really has your best interest at heart is yourself. And I decided I'd never put myself in that position again. And so what happened was that a good friend of mine, William, who went on to become a very successful judge, he was a barrister in the chambers I worked in, he said to me, look, Stephen, I've known a couple that live up in the Lake District in a small village called Cartmel. And he said, I've known them for 5 years. They've got a global business. It involves helping people with their health and wellness and their lifestyle. And I've known them 5 years. Their business has grown year on year. They're having fun. They've got an amazing lifestyle. I think you'd be fascinated to meet them and see what they do. And that was it. So he said, let's go and see them for lunch. So I did. And I did. And funnily enough, as an aside, in the background, I had a couple of very close friends who were very spiritual, and their names Philip and Jan, and they knew me for a long time, and they knew my children for a long time. And Jan at the time, who obviously knew of my court case and all the stress and everything that was involved, she said to me, she said, Stephen, I'm going to pray for you. And not only was she praying for me, but actually the congregation in the church that she attended was as well.
Lovely.
So she told me this, and at the same time, William said, well, why don't you come and meet these people? So I did, and the idea was we go for lunch, and I went for lunch, and they were lovely, and I was very interested in what they were doing because they were having fun, they were helping people, they had a lovely lifestyle, they had everything I didn't have, and I ended up staying at their house for 3 days. So you imagine, Alan, someone saying to you, oh, I've got a friend, he'd like to meet you. Can he come to your house for lunch? And you say, because you're a nice person, yeah, of course. So they come. And then they move in for 3 days. I mean,
oh, dear,
I'm not sure what Anne would say, but anyway. So I stayed for 3 days. They was very polite and charming, and bearing in mind, in the role I had, I was trained to look for what was missing. So with court papers or documents, whatever, I was always trained to look for what was missing. So here I was in a situation that I'd never come across before. And I just went into my looking for what was missing mode. I mean, I had no clue what was going on. But I asked to see bank statements, I asked to see marriage certificates, you name it, I asked to see it. And it became a bit of a game for me because they were so accommodating. Everything I asked to see, every question I asked, got answered. And I thought, oh, well, maybe the next thing I ask for, they'll say, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I can't let you see that or something. And then I thought, well, when they do that, oh no, aha, that's the missing link.
Right.
But that never happened.
All right.
So
okay.
So after 3 days of this carry on, they said to me, so Stephen, on your health journey, thinking about where you are and where you'd like to go, how do you feel? So now they was obviously looking at my waistline. At the time, my waist was pushing 40 inches. It was 39 inches. So
Wow. Yeah.
I was obese and overweight.
I find that odd. Now, knowing you now, I find that really you
Yes,
wouldn't think. Mind you, I do understand that, because when my marriage ended, I went up to nearly like 20 stone. So I do understand, yeah, what stress can do to you. Yeah.
yes. Well, that was what happened to me, and I was really not aware. I was unaware of. I was really unaware of that. I wouldn't buy the correct size waist trousers. I'd buy the size below. I'd push them down on my hips. They clearly wouldn't go over my belly button, as a lot of guys actually do. But so I was in complete denial of that, and Martin and Karen was very, very good. They never pointed to my stomach and said, "Well, do you think you've got a problem?" They didn't do that. They were very polite, and they said, "Well, what areas of your health do you think you like?" So I said, "Energy. I need more energy. I just need more energy. Basically, I was struggling. 2 young sons. I was struggling to do everything I needed to do." And my 2 young sons, who obviously wanted my time and attention, and energy was the thing. So what they did was they put me on what was in effect a weight management nutrition plan. And after 3 days, my energy just went through the roof. I was shocked. And as a side effect, I lost 6 inches off my waist in 3 months.
Wow.
Trousers fell down. I didn't even know that was going to happen. I was very pleased with the energy. But anyway, so everything changed health-wise. And because when I was with Martin and Karen, I could see the way they were helping people locally, nationally, globally. I thought, oh, there's definitely an opportunity here, and I started to attract people. People started to notice my energy had changed. People started to notice that I'd changed shape, and they started to ask what I was doing. And I was excited, and I was just sharing sort of it, and
Yeah.
I then started to help people with that, and build a customer base. And I thought, wow, my first person I really helped was a guy called Rick, and he'd been really struggling. He was massively overweight, and he felt so bad about himself. He'd taken all the mirrors out in his house. Friends would ring him, and he would refuse to go out. And his wife was very worried about him. His doctor had said, if he continued like this, he was going to have serious health problems. And he found me, and I helped him completely change. And the thing that really got me and made me realize this was something it was like a passion, a calling that had been awoken. What really got me, Alan, was he looked me in the eyes and he said, "Stephen, I'm never going to be able to thank you enough. You've completely changed my life."
That's marvelous.
And 26 years in law, I'd never had anyone say that. It was a completely different culture, a mission. money played such a central role. I'm not saying money isn't important, but it played such a central role, so what Rick said to me really, really hit me straight in the heart, and that was the catalyst then for me then deciding that this was something that I was going to pursue and was going to be a lifelong passion. It wasn't a matter of dipping my toe in or trying it. It was a mission.
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, I'm very good at law, but the challenge with it is that it demands so much of you. It takes, when you're good at something, and it's quite easy to do, as it were, I'd never be able to really pursue this new opportunity. So I thought, right, what I've got to do is I've got to find a way I can burn my bridges with law. So I did. I decided to become like a sort of a freelance troubleshooter, going into different chambers, sorting matters out, and at the same time, I had a lot of friends who were medics, and they said, "Look, why don't you requalify, and move into pharmaceutical sales? You'll have more autonomy, and you could do that part-time, company car, etc., and at the same time you can start to build up your other interests." So that's what I did. I qualified, and I then burnt my bridges completely with law, which is what I needed to do. And then I was in pharmaceuticals for about 18 months, 2 years. So I was selling drugs to doctors and pharmacists, etc. And but I always knew I was going to be in and out in that industry. And I found another example of an industry I didn't want anything to do with. But it gave me an insight. And at the same time, my nutrition business was growing, and within 18 months, I was out. So from the age of 48, I have just really helped people with their health and nutrition, change their lifestyle. And because I can only look after directly a certain number of customers, then what happens is you move into teaching and mentoring. So I've been able to teach and mentor others, build customer bases, and as a unit, as a group, we're able to affect more people. So directly, I've probably helped, over the years, hundreds and hundreds of people. But as a mentor and a teacher of others, I've been able to affect thousands of people.
That's absolutely marvelous, Stephen. And because the products that you're associated with, that they can be a basis for people to alter their lifestyle, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The first example starts as yourself. So everything I talk about when I talk to others, it's coming from personal experience.
Yes.
So it means, in terms of being authentic, it's very authentic, because I'm only suggesting or recommending products which I use myself, or did use. I mean, I really actually use more. So we're talking about supplementation, and So I'm a massive advocate of supplementation. Everyone knows our diet and the food that we eat is different from what it used to be. The reality is we're all busy. And so there's only very, very few people who've got the time and resources to be able to produce all their own food, grow all their own food. Is not really realistic in this day and age. So so I'm an advocate of plugging the gaps, making sure that we're giving the body what it needs to be able to perform to its best ability.
So you basically started an association with Herbalife. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. That's the that's the product, the company that Martin and Karen was working with, and they introduced me to. And basically, over the years, although I'm not a nutritionist, I hasten to add, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't have medical qualifications. However, if you throw enough mud at the wall, a certain amount will stick. And I've attended, and it's part and parcel of a learning journey. I've attended countless trainings and events which the company facilitate purely and simply to educate the members. And so it means, rubbing shoulders with some of the top doctors and nutritionists on the planet because they associate themselves with the company. Everything behind the company is cutting edge science. So unlike food companies, where there's no science behind the food companies, they're interested in, how they produce food, more food that tastes great, food that has longer shelf life, food that gives maximum profitability for the food company.
Yes.
Where Herbalife comes from is its cutting edge science, functional food, if you like. It comes under food labeling. So it's functional food that comes in various forms that you can cook with, you can implement it into your diet in different ways, and nothing's banned, unlike diet companies where you've got ban this, negative points that, etc. Shame on you for eating this. There's nothing off limits in what we do, but what we're actually doing is we're combining a cutting edge supplement that you can't get in shops. You can only get them from people who use the products themselves, and have proven to themselves that they work, even though we don't need any more guinea pigs. But at the same time, it comes with support, care and attention and support. And what people need is they need someone or a group of people who are going to help them re-educate their thinking so that their lifestyle can change. Because we don't just live on supplements. There's something that's in addition to our whole food diet. And as I said, it's to plug the gaps. But we've got to help re-educate people, because if they're maybe doing things that are sabotaging their health, they often won't realise. So that's where we come in and we shine a spotlight on those areas which they're unwittingly tripping themselves up.
That's all right. That's all right. My mute button got stuck. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I didn't know whether you want me to go on.
No, it's right. Like I'll share this with everybody, right? I was just about to have a coughing fit, so I put it on mute, and then I was trying to click it back on, and the thing wouldn't click back on.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Oh dear, never mind. Never mind.
That's
But,
okay. Technical
um,
gremlins.
Technically gremlins, yes. Well, I mean, Anna and I know you and Karen, well. We've known each other for a good many years now, and you've been
Yes,
to our
yes,
home, and we've been to yours, and
yes.
and your background of where you come from to where you are now, and from my point of view, your spiritual awakening, do you find that has come through the fact that you're now associated with Herbalife and work with them, helping other people? Do you feel that is where the spiritual side of how you look at life now kind of manifested itself?
So that's a a very interesting question, Alan. Well, given that the products have they've been established since 1980. Tens of millions of people around the world use the products every day in I think over 95 countries. So we don't really need anyone else to test the products. A
Yeah,
person might be apprehensive, and obviously because they've tried lots of things, and they're thinking, "Will this work?" and blah blah blah. But the reality is, we don't need anyone else to test the products; they work. And then in terms of what we call it's called the marketing plan. I refer to it as the career plan, if you like,
yeah,
which is basically you're remunerated purely and simply based on the number of people you help. The more people you help, the more people's health you change, the more you uplift people, then the more you're financially remunerated. So, given that's been tested and proven since 1980, the one variable in the whole equation is you as an individual and your personal development, let's call it that. So, I was at age 42, and all the development I'd ever done up to that point was around my work,
yeah,
purely to do with my work. I'd never read a personal development book before age 42 and before starting and getting involved with Herbalife. So I think the answer is definitely yes, because as I started to awaken, if you like, what was inside me, I think a lot of the material, the books, the podcasts, the audio books, the seminars, the live events, all of them are based on helping and uplifting others. And
yes,
the world I'd operated in previously was a black and white world, of winners and losers,
yes,
and right and wrong. And then suddenly, I was working and in contact with the general public, and I was working with a company whose founder based the whole essence of the company on a spiritual principle, and that was wanting to improve the nutritional habits of people in his local community, in the country, in America, and then globally. That was the vision that the founder had. uplifting and helping people. So, of course, I was subjected to that for the first time at age 42, and then for 22 years since then, and it doesn't finish. It doesn't finish. So, in answer to the question, yes, I think that was a real catalyst for really thinking about others much more than I'd done before.
I know what you've said to me, not long ago actually, is that I think it was last week when we was talking, that you said it surprised you in one sense how many people that you now know, associate with, who have got this kind of spiritual outlook on life.
Yes,
It's almost
yes,
like you're drawn to people, and I
yes,
understand that
yes,
one, yeah. So, because I think without even realizing, we can give out a certain thought process into the universe that people pick up on. I know that some people might think, well, I've never heard anything so daft, but no, I do believe that we give off subliminal signals that attract a certain type of person to us. And I think that's probably what's been going on, Stephen.
Well, you must be right, because why was it when I was in law I didn't connect with people like that at all?
And I mean, and since this awakening has happened, you've definitely been tested, haven't you? You've certainly had some strange things happen. I don't know whether you want to talk about those things or not. I'm not going to press you, but I think you know which one I'm thinking of.
Well, yes. Would you like me to mention that,
If
Alan?
you're
I'm
if
more than
you're if
happy
you're
to.
if you're happy to, I don't
Yes,
want
yes,
you to.
sure. Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's fine. Uh, yeah, I'm thinking about, when I think about some strange things that have happened to me, sort of personally. One of the things I would say, and this went back to maybe when I was about 14, even 14. Yeah, I must have been about 14, 15. Um, I was at a party, and I came outside. It was a clear night, and yeah, clear night. Sky was clear, and I saw a UFO. Basically, it was a UFO, and I looked at it, um, and it was in the sky, and I sort of could see sort of the shape of it, um, and it was just hovering. Unlike an aircraft, it wasn't a holly. It was silent, and it was in the sky, and it was just hanging there, and it was like no other sort of aircraft or shape I'd ever seen,
Yeah.
and it was there for some time. I was looking at it, and then when it moved and it went away, it was. It moved like something out of Star Wars. It moved across the whole of the horizon so quickly. I'd
Wow.
never seen anything like that, and I've never seen anything like it subsequently.
Yeah.
So it was definitely, I can only say, UFO. So not everyone sees UFOs. So
No.
I don't know. I don't know whether you know. Um, I don't know what you make of that, but anyway, that was something I remember specifically. And
I,
then,
I, I have,
sorry,
Stephen. So I have myself, going back some years ago.
yeah,
Um,
I I I
so
I, I
I go along with you. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so my wife and I, we went on it was not to do with our company, because our company puts on the most incredible personal development training and events. There's no other company like it. And but in addition, we do other things. So my wife and I, we was on a course, and part of this course was going into the jungle in Malaysia, in the north,
Yes.
for a week, and it was a leadership development course. And what happened was, we went into the jungle. We completed this course. It was very challenging. At the end of the course, we was due to leave and fly back home. And at that point, what happened was, my wife had what looked like some sort of bite on her ankle, which had swollen up. So we went to the doctors on our way back to the airport, and then when we was in the taxi on the way back to the airport, the cab, my wife started to speak very, very quickly, and started to write furiously on paper, and wanted more and more paper. And she was saying, "Oh, I'm getting these downloads. I'm getting these downloads. I've got all these ideas. I have to write them all down." And this was happening at sort of breakneck speed. And we got to and it was obviously odd behaviour. So we came to the airport, and we got to the airport, and for some reason, I think it was because of her leg, they got her a wheelchair and put her on the flight in the aircraft. So we got in the airport, and when we was on the plane waiting to take off, she wouldn't sit down. And so she was asked to sit down. She wasn't sit down. She was sort of going up and down the aircraft, talking to people. And I started to get worried, because I thought, well, if she doesn't sit down, we're not going to be able to take off. So it got to the point where, after she'd been asked a number of times, they had to say to her, "Look, seriously, if you don't sit down, we're going to have to remove you from the flight." So she didn't sit down. So we was taken off the flight, which was obviously stressful. And we was then taken into a sort of a private waiting area. Our baggage had to be taken off the flight, and what happened was, she then was taken to a sort of a room, and a gentleman, very nice gentleman, come along, and he spoke to her, and then he came to me, and he said, "Look," he said, "I've seen this sort of thing before." He says, "I've got to tell you that your wife has become possessed, and has demons in her." He said, "Now look," he says, I'm a holy man, and I have spirit water, and I'm going to try and help her." So, you can imagine, I was like completely shocked about what on earth was going on here. Worried about my wife, couldn't make out. I mean, he was a senior official in the airport. So I thought, well, I don't know. So anyway, so he went to see my wife. Yeah, what's going on? So he came back, and he said, "Look, I've used this holy water, but I've got to tell you that this is a very strong, strong case, or it's very strong. And he says, what's going to happen is your wife will be taken to the hospital, and when they take her to the hospital, he said the problem is that they will, the doctors and the nurses, they will obviously be trained in Western medicine, and they will be using Western medicine, but that's not the real problem here. And he said, even though they've been trained, because of their culture and background in Malaysia and the jungle, they will know from their parents or grandparents about jungle spirits, etc. And they will know about that, but they won't be able to acknowledge it because of their training. So he said, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to get help from someone who knows about these things. So with that, we were then taken away in an ambulance. On the way, we had to visit the police station, because when you're taken off of a flight, the police are involved. And so we went to the hospital, and when we got to the hospital, we were taken into the sort of the wait, the arrival room.
Yes.
And literally, as soon as we arrived, my wife's engagement ring was stolen. My mobile phone was stolen, and then we were sort of waiting there. I was beside myself with worry, and from there we was then taken onto the main ward, and along with others, and so I remember that there was a number of families who was visiting different people on the ward, and a gentleman came up to me, a second gentleman came up to me and said, "Oh, I've just seen your wife," and because it was an open ward, he said, "I've seen your wife, and I've got to tell you that she's possessed, and there are demons involved, and you need help from a holy man." So he said, "I will try to see if I can contact someone," and so I was, I was then, I think, well, that's the second person who has come up and said this. I don't know who they are. They come and go and then disappear, and I'm on my own here. My phone's gone. What do I do? What do I do? Fortunately, I remembered that a very good friend of mine called Ian, who is in Sweden now.
He's a nice man. Nice man.
Yes. Ian, he has a friend called David Ashworth. And
Yes.
I was in Harrogate one time when I bumped into Ian out of the blue, and he was living in Sweden at the time. I wasn't expecting him to see him in Harrogate, and he said, "Oh, I'm here with a friend, David Ashworth, and we're attending a spirit." Yeah, we're attending a spirit. Sorry,
better just say that I'm friends with David as well. So it's strange how all this is happening. Yeah,
exactly. So he said to me, Ian said, "Oh, why don't you come and say hi to David at this spiritual?" So I went, and he introduced me to David. and I think we had a cup of tea afterwards. And anyway, David was signing his new book, which was called Dancing with the Devil While You Channel in the Light.
I've got a copy of that, yeah.
And, you know, now bearing in mind, this was several years before this event in Malaysia. I thought, well, you know, he's a nice guy. He's bought me a cup of tea. I better buy his book. So I bought his book, which I didn't have a clue what on earth was about. I knew nothing, and he signed it. But I read it, because if you give me a book, I'm going to read it. I've always been an avid reader. So I read this book, Dancing with the Devil While You Channel in the Light. Anyway, it was a good job I read this, although I couldn't, you know, it wasn't relevant to me. But what it meant was, when I was in this situation, after both of these two gentlemen had explained what the problem was with my wife, I then thought, oh, I need to contact David Ashworth, because he knows about things like this, because I've read that book. Does that make sense, Alan?
Yeah, of course it does.
So I thought, okay, I will ring him. So I thought, oh no, I can't ring him because his number's in my phone. Because in the back of his book, unlike a lot of authors, he put his name and contact details in the back of his book. So yes. I just saved it. Anyway, I thought, well, I can't contact David. Oh no, because my phone's been stolen. And I thought, okay, and then I thought, all right, I'll try and contact Ian. But I only had my wife's phone, and she didn't have Ian's number in, nor David's, nor anyone else of my contacts. But the very strange thing was, when I looked in my wife's phone, David's number was in her phone, which didn't make sense to me, because I didn't understand how my contacts or my contact could be in her phone, but it was. So that's another mystery. So I tried to ring David, couldn't get an answer. Then I needed Ian's number to try and find out where David was.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, Ian's number was in my wife's phone as well.
Amazing.
So I rang Ian's number. He's in Sweden. He tells me David's on a tour in Australia. So David couldn't help. But he said, I know someone who can help. Alan Cox.
Yes, me, yes.
You. So he said, Alan will be able to help you. So as you know, what happened was I rang you from the hospital in Malaysia, beside myself with worry, and you spoke about it as though it was something, you know, that was not normal, but something that happens a lot. And I mean, that was reassuring for me to hear that, because I thought, well, at least there's someone who knows about whatever's going on here.
Yeah.
And shall I tell the listeners what happened next?
Please, yeah, if you'd like to, yes, by all means.
Okay. So what happened next was Alan explained to me that he works with a psychic surgeon, and that basically you know, he would need to sort of assess the situation, and after doing so, then you know, told me that there was a number of quite strong entities involved, and particularly with my wife, to a certain extent with myself, and you said what would happen is that I would go back to the ward where my wife was, and that, you know, your spirit psychic surgeon and team, and I think you mentioned the blind nurse. I can't remember, but anyway,
Yes.
team, and you said they would perform, you know, some sort of psychic surgery or something, and then after that, my wife would sleep, and then all would be well. Now, I definitely wanted to believe that was what was going to happen, because I was thinking to myself, you know, I'd lost her, and I thought I didn't know how on earth she could come back from this. All the doctors were saying, you know, she's suffering from psychosis and this and that and stuff, and I just now I thought, I honestly was praying to get my wife back, but I didn't know whether that was going to happen. Anyway,
That's awful.
Yeah, so it really was. So anyway, so it happened exactly as you said. I went back to where my wife was, and then, and she had her eyes closed, and was, well, appeared asleep, but she couldn't have been asleep, because what happened was she then actually started speaking, and it was like she was describing what was happening. She was talking about this psychic surgeon coming into the room. A blind nurse was assisting him and others, and she actually provided a running commentary of a surgery which I was listening to, and I thought, well, you know, she couldn't have heard the conversation we had, because I was at the other side of the hospital when we had it. I've just come back there. There's no way she could have known what you had said to me. And yet she was providing this running commentary, you know, outlining exactly what was happening. I mean, my jaw was on the floor. You can imagine. And and then eventually, you know, it all finished, and she stopped speaking, and then she went into a deep sleep. I then I had like a bed chair at the side of her bed, and I was exhausted. I got on the chair, and I got this blanket, because they leave all the lights on in the wall, and I pulled this blanket over my head. And all I can describe is that it looked like millions and millions of like pinpoints of light, which had, the blanket had somehow turned into these pinpricks of light, which completely covered me. And then there was a feeling I had, and I can remember it now as vividly as it happened then. And it felt like a blanket of love was being pulled over me, placed over me, a blanket of love.
Oh, lovely.
And it was these pinpoints of light, and this feeling, which was incredible. And I remember, again, this is very vivid, I remember thinking to myself, wow, if this is how death feels, if this is heaven, if you like, then I'd be very happy to be there right now, or whenever. because the feeling is indescribable. Anyway, I woke up after a time. I then went back because if there was a spare bed in the ward, you could lie on it, and this sort of chair wasn't very comfortable. So I must have gone to sleep. I was exhausted. Then I went, found a bed that was free, laid on top, and at 6 a.m. that morning, my wife woke up, called my name. I heard her. I went over to her. She opened her eyes, and she was back. My wife was back, and whatever had happened was gone.
That is so lovely. I must admit, what happened to you, it's been in my memory, ever since then. And I'm trying to remember the year because it was before the pandemic. So.
Oh yes. I mean, I think it was maybe 5 years before that. Was it 10 years ago or something?
That's what I thought. I thought it was about 10 years ago. Yes, and that was absolutely marvelous. And then I remember that, so you was able to come back home then, weren't you?
Yes. What happened was up to that point, all the time, the doctors were checking on my wife. They were deeming her not fit to fly. We was in the hospital for 3 weeks in Kuala Lumpur General Hospital, which I wouldn't recommend to anyone. The cockroaches used to come out as soon as the lights went out at night. It was, they didn't have a clue about cross-contamination or anything. Anyway, that's when you really realise you're in a third world country, and you're behind the tourist scenes. You're anyway, that's a whole nother thing. So the doctor's been checking on her. She wasn't deemed fit to fly, and then literally within, goodness me, 48 hours of your intervention, she was deemed fit to fly, and we was able to come back to the UK. At this end, obviously they wanted to know what was happening. We wasn't able to ever tell anyone. The doctors would have thought we'd gone mad. They was all, they was querying sepsis, they was querying all sorts of stuff, so she came back to the UK. At this end, they was obviously concerned, but quickly found that it was all back to normal. All back to normal, so it never happened.
And then I remember we came down to your house where you used to live.
Yes.
To make sure that was all right and clear all that. Yeah. So
yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, I mean that was an awful thing for Karen to go through. Absolutely terrible. And the experience for yourself as well, because you both affected from that. And but I do believe that I don't know if you want to call it God, the universe, good spirit, whatever you want to call it, made it so you could find a way of getting help, because it could quite easily been a lot worse, couldn't it?
Well, of course, and there was another couple of things to add. So for Karen, I mean, I was in a situation where I thought I'd lost my wife, and I was really, really, really unsure whether I'd ever get her back. And then secondly, she felt, she describes, because I've said to her, what, and she says, all I can remember is imagine you're trapped inside your body, and you're calling out, and she says it was like that, like I was trapped in my body. I'm calling out, but like no one's hearing me, and I'm stuck.
Yes.
So that's what she said the experience was like. The other thing to mention that's interesting is that so a lot of the time, Karen's behavior while this was happening, well, you describe it as manic. You describe it as manic. You know, wouldn't sit down, kept moving. You know, she had a drip. She wanted to keep taking that out. Blah blah blah. And actually, a lot of the time and it was very difficult. She had to be restrained. So, you know, you imagine for me, and for her, it was very difficult. And all she felt was she was trapped inside herself and was calling out, but couldn't be heard. And what we found was there was one thing in particular that really helped her be calm. And it's very funny. What it was, we had a recording of Dr. Wayne Dwyer.
Yes.
For those that know him, I don't know whether I've mentioned to you this before, Alan, but it's come back to me. We had a recording of Dr. Wayne Dwyer, and he is talking about the Dao De Chang.
Oh, sorry.
And the Tao, and
right. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
The Tao. My pronunciation is probably not as good as yours. The Tao De Ching, and anyway, so on there he does a particular chanting, if you like, Tao,
Yeah.
and which means God.
Yes.
And it literally is the one word, Tao, 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 and he repeats that. It's a chant, and that was the one thing that it literally playing it on a endless loop is what helped Karen and kept her calm.
Russell, you know, if we put our faith, I suppose, in God, universe, good energy, whatever symbol that you feel is right for yourself, then there is a way through problems, and you certainly guided to how you're going to get the help in that terrible situation, Stephen. You know.
Yes.
But the beautiful part about it all is that, am I right in saying that experience in some ways has made you stronger? That you've been able to come through such a terrible ordeal together?
Yes, I think what it's done is I mean, I've always believed in God, Great Spirit, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I've always believed in that. For me, what it's done is it's made it indisputable. It's made it, you know,
yes.
I don't know what you could call it. And for Karen, yes, it's completely and utterly caused us to be, without doubt, we you know, we are people of faith, and when you've been through an experience like that, you know, and you've had indisputable proof, you just couldn't make that up. There is no doubt about it that there is something which is that's operating, that is there, and it's available to everyone. Yeah,
that's right. No, you're right. We're going to have to wind it up, Stephen. I can't tell you how much I've really enjoyed listening to your incredible life story. You know, and I'm so happy that Anne and I know yours and Karen's friends. Well, we have been for 10 years now.
yes, yes.
But I think it's important if you could tell people if they're interested in you know, their health, nutrition, and that, and finding out how they can you could help them. But please say how's the best way they can contact you, please.
Yes, thank you, Alan, and likewise, I've enjoyed sharing the story. I hope it can help someone who might be tuning in. Yes, so we continue, and we're more passionate and motivated and inspired than ever to change people's lives and uplift people. That's what we do, and so if you'd like to get in touch, the best way to contact me would be Stephen Slater, and you simply can get in touch by sending an email to info@lifestyleleaders.co.uk. I'll just repeat that. So it's info@lifestyle, LIFESTYLE, leaders, LEADERS.co.uk, and we can have a chat.
That's marvelous. And if anybody's interested in to know more about me, my website is understandingspirit.com, and you can give me a call on 0794 383 4801. I'll send you the recording, Stephen, and you're free to share it wherever you wish to. I
Thank you very much,
enjoyed it.
Alan.
It's
Yes,
a pleasure.
thank you very much.
And anyway, I hope everybody out there in internet land gets out there in the sunshine while it's here and enjoy themselves, even though it's a little bit cooler today. And anyway, God bless. Have a lovely week, and it's goodbye for now.